Alright guys, welcome to the UK Shoutcasters test podcast? It needs a better name. My name is Peter Canafit-Harnell, here with John Ellis, the player development coach for XL, and Ibriz, a fellow Shoutcaster currently operating out of Japan. Guys, how are you doing on this fine morning / late night in Japan, I guess?
Evening, but yeah.
I was waiting for one of you to start talking, and I was like, both of you are going to start talking
waiting.
exactly at the same time.
Okay, go.
No,
You go
just
first.
when you ask questions, I reckon just direct it to one
Take the
person.
wheel,
'cause
take
we're
the
not
wheel,
actually
just
here.
do it.
Okay, no,
Answer
this
the
is good
question,
hosting
man.
lessons. I'm learning.
Yeah,
Answer the question.
I'm good there. I'm good.
Okay, good.
That's-
I'm good too.
I'm glad we got there.
Happy to be here on the UK Shoutcasters casting couch.
Oh boy, it's a prestigious couch. You wouldn't believe the kind of things that have been on that couch. Alright, so we've got a few things to talk about today. First of all, John, I know you wanted to kind of discuss, first of all, the UK, or rather, well, it used to be UK Masters, but now EU Masters.
EU Masters, yeah. Well, no, just for anyone who didn't get a chance to see it when it was wait, I should have got the date of this already, but it was fairly recent, and there'll be another one in September, I believe, which is really good. Basically, if anyone didn't manage to check it out, you should definitely check out the next one. The format they do is there's national leagues all around Europe, and they have the top teams from each national league basically play in a sort of Champions League style cup where you play group stages and then you play knockout as well. So it's really interesting, and I mean, basically, like cup formats are just so hype, really, just in general, because when you get to the point of like these long knockouts, they're just like really useful. So it's great to see national leagues being able to have that opportunity to play against each other as well.
For sure. Obviously, besides the likes of the big organizations like Origin, you aren't really going to be seeing too many of these teams in the major leagues anytime soon. I say Origin, and I think Mysterious Monkeys also played, but besides that, most of these teams never been out of the equivalent of, well, Challenger. Oh, I think Giants were there as well. Anyway, yeah, so this is more of a player scouting kind of thing. I think it's a good level to aspire to for all these amateur like solo queue players as well. You know, it's kind of like the new Challenger series, but it really gives further incentive to actually play in the national leagues, which were oftentimes seen as just like a time sink where the money was kind of laughable in the past as well. So it's really good for not only the players, but these smaller organizations just get this little extra bit of exposure that the league brings.
Yeah, I mean, for people who haven't been like paying attention to national leagues in the last few years, they've all gone like massive in terms of like production value, scale, and standard. Has all been increasing really, really rapidly. So I mean,
I wouldn't say so much standard. Have you seen some of these teams in the Masters? But
yeah, I think there's plenty of players who are playing in EU Masters who'll be playing in LCS very soon. That's
sure, players, but I think the macro is still what you'd expect from an amateur level, to be honest. Like in terms of skill level, besides Origin having like, you know, the full team of veterans, I believe that individuals should promise, but I don't think you're gonna find someone in like a whole team in EU Masters that could go toe to toe with an entire LCS team just because of the way the system works nowadays. There's none of these surprising like random teams of rookies that just suddenly emerge from Challenger that have really showed themselves this round of EU Masters.
Yeah, and that's due to the fact that LCS teams are doing much more scouting than they used to. So you don't get people who are like secretly really good that no one knows about, right? So people who are good, and that's, I think, just that can only be a benefit, really. Like, yeah, you don't get the hype of a sudden set of rookies coming in, but it just feeds the pro league much better than it used to. So I think it's definitely...
Yeah, on the other hand, I think the bottom like half of LCS teams really stagnate now. Again, this was a concern people had with franchising coming in, that, you know, you have these teams that just kind of meme around. But no, yeah, as you said, it's healthy for the scene in general, and it's really good to see all these emerging and up-and-coming players just on any kind of stage where people might have overlooked them because they're playing in the national league. But again, this kind of international kind of mini cup tournament, as you mentioned, just, yeah, nothing but good stuff for the scene.
Well, John, you were saying that you would kind of hoped to see the EU LCS move towards this kind of angle.
Yeah, so I don't have like any insider knowledge more than anyone else had in terms of like the articles that came out, but from what I was told, the original plan for EU franchising was to basically do what this has now become. So they were going to do franchised leagues, national leagues, and then they were going to feed into a European Cup that would be happening, I think was going to be happening simultaneously. So you'd be able to watch, let's say, the UK teams, but the UK teams would be like, I don't know, like Fnatic and Splice and like those sort of players and all the people that you know already. But then they'd also go and compete somewhere else. But when they're competing against, I don't know, some of the teams in Germany, for example, it would still be England versus Germany, like the flags would be there and that sort of thing, which is, I think, really hype because there's a lot of these players where if you've been watching the scene for a long time, you're obviously big fans of them and stuff like that. But for bringing in new fans, just having that national team to cheer for is so useful in terms of encouraging people to watch and get involved. Because if you don't really care which team wins, then watching League of Legends is not particularly fun unless you're trying to like break it down to learn more about the game or something like that.
So I don't know, like all the North
for.
American. But I think the system in North America could work equally as good as it does for as it would for you. Sorry, because as you said, it's difficult to invest in a team when you don't really care who's winning. But I think that's less an issue of this lack of representation of national leagues or whatever, and more an issue of the players just not building enough branding. And I think the teams, if they get into franchising, should really work on building up their players as individual brands as well as like team marketing in general.
Yeah, and that is a big part of like the application process, I assume, like making sure.
Well, that's why Immortals. Well, not why Immortals. Who got knocked out of franchising? Yeah, Immortals did, but that wasn't because of the thing. It was because Riot was concerned that they were putting too much money in Overwatch and would be in a questionable position finances wise if a venture capitalist pulled out suddenly. Envy, maybe? I can't remember. Someone got denied franchising because they basically didn't have a fan base. But yeah,
I do think
FlyQuest and stuff coming in. So
yeah, I do think in general though, stuff like a slightly different format would be something that's useful. I mean, I know the reason that they don't like cups normally, and the reason that OGN, for example, switched to a league is for that same thing in sponsors, right? Because if you got knocked out of Champions, as it was back down to NLB, the viewer base drops so massively that it makes no sense to have
sustain a team in general. Yeah, especially if you're not like a top half one.
Yeah, but so the point would have been is that you'd have franchise leagues within each region. So you'd have, I think it was 6 or 8 or something. So not big leagues in each national region, where you'd be franchised and guaranteed to be playing in that. So I mean, it's fine, and the LCS is still great. It would have been nice to see some interesting like new developments, and considering how well EU Masters did in terms of like viewership and engagement and stuff like that, and everyone who was like watching it was really impressed with the whole tournament, like the feedback.
Yeah, but again, you have to keep in mind that Origin brought a lot of the viewers for that just by having that team that they fielded, and I think it's important to see if EU Masters in September, if it happens with no Origin this time around, or if Origin field a less star-studded roster, if EU Masters can even draw in like half of the viewers that it got.
Yeah, but I think that's why I'm encouraging people to watch it.
Yeah,
there won't be an Origin style team anymore because there's no Challenger Series spots or anything like that. So you have to have been playing in national leagues to even play in the tour. So.
Well,
and that's why I think the viewership's going to drop, and that's why I think that this is maybe just a test year for Riot, just to see what they can do in each kind of way, and I think they're just going to keep pushing it for the next couple of splits.
I think with franchising as well, I think you're supposed to have a like academy team as well, right? So that'll feed into that. So the EU Masters will be the same orgs that just with the different set of players and with the set of players that you're very likely to see.
Basically the EU Academy League.
Yeah, it would be like players that you'll want to see coming up into the LCS and stuff like that, so you can get a sort of head start on who you might be seeing in the next few splits. Which would be
on
really
the other hand, if it's like Academy Leagues in NA, which like practically no one watches anyway, but if it's like Academy League in NA, it really draws a question as to what happens to all of these National League organizations that are just going to find suddenly they don't have the international tournament to aim towards.
I think it's definitely going to still be good for all that sort of thing. So you have, for example, in the UK scene at the moment, you have Misfits Academy. So you have people on these smaller UK orgs who are just focused on maybe even just UK League of Legends, and they're able to play against sort of recognizable brand and name, which is just going to be good.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's good if EU Masters has like, I don't know, 16 teams perhaps. But I think that if it's just the same organizations from LCS, well, okay, so I think the idea you were putting across to me was that each LCS team would have the academy team, whatever. Would their academy teams automatically qualify for the new EU Masters, or would they have to qualify in a like mini tournament or included part of the tournament with the National League teams?
They have to play in a National League. That's the point of the academy teams in Europe.
Okay, but what happens to the okay, what happens to the other National League teams? Yeah, okay, fine.
This is what I mean. So you get a chance to play against.
Yeah, it's all just one big chance, and then
academy or whatever it is. And all these
I'd say that's healthy for the scene. It makes them do better, I guess. Yeah, okay, I get that. Pete, you had something to say, but then we got into a discussion.
We'll have to figure out a frantic hand signal method. Honestly, I was enjoying what you guys are saying. It's fine.
Man, I shifted on the couch and sat in Ben Varm.
Okay. The only thing I was going to add to that was, it does make me wonder. I don't know what you guys thought of it. Right, I kind of like whole might be a chance to try out this how well onto it before they really commit to it, like an EU LCS back again very easily.
I don't think that's very likely, I have to say. I think because they've decided now they're going with the standard franchising thing because it works so well in America. They're just going for the standard league format. I don't see them after however long it is, like 3 years or whatever, then switching back to a national leagues thing. I don't think that'll. I think what they'll try and do is just try and push the like academy teams and push the European Masters as a good place to see all these up and coming people. But I mean, like the academy. Sorry, I just punched my mic. I don't know if you had.
You're fine,
the academy leagues in NA. I mean, they still get like 35,000 viewers. It's like it's not bad. It's still like a great place to show talent, and that's where people are going to look. So at the moment, in terms of scouting, people look at the like Spanish and then some of the other national leagues basically, and the Spanish one is just so far ahead of everywhere else. But if you had academy leagues, if you had academy teams in all the national leagues and pushing all the academy players and doing all the same stuff, hopefully that they're going to be doing in terms of content with their main teams as well, that I just think it's definitely going to be helpful in terms of.
But then you run the risk of running into these teams like Click Tech, where they were the like pretty much only notable team from their region, and they came in, had some really phenomenal games, but then just fell apart completely when it got into the deeper parts.
But that's great for Click Tech. What happened was absolutely amazing for Click Tech. Like if they'd have just been playing really in the Balkan regions.
Yeah, it's really good that they had the international experience, but I would like to see more opportunities for them to play against these other regions throughout the year. Maybe not the big EU Masters tournament, but something to lead up to that, because otherwise they're just going to get smashed 2 times a year. Because they were miles ahead of every other team in their region, but then as soon as they come to an international stage, they get hammered. So I think it's like something should be done in terms of support for them to be getting some experience against these apparently better teams on a more frequent basis, because otherwise, again, they get smashed twice a year. It's like,
I think
not really fair.
Well, I mean, so I don't know if it's gonna. I mean, it will probably affect their region as well, but I don't think you can. I think if anything, that was massive for their skill, because they're going to be able to use that showing at EU Masters. And even though yes, they did have a negative win-loss when they actually came to the actual tournament. They still showed up against teams and they still beat Origin, stuff like that. So they're going to be able to get better scrims, they're going to be able to get better practice partners, and they're going to be able to improve their standard and hopefully bring that to the rest of the region as well. Because
I think that's really good for them, but then you have to keep in mind regions like Germany, whose teams all like bombed and were like last place, all three of them.
Yeah.
And then again, it just affects the quality of scrims you're going to be getting. It affects the quality of everything leading up to this second iteration of EU Masters. And I'm just wondering, can these teams get the support they need to actually show up on this international stage before then? Because clearly, no matter how well you're doing in your regional league, it doesn't mean anything when it comes to international competition.
What kind of thing were you thinking of, Briz? Like as an alternative?
I'm thinking more international tournaments, because organising tournaments within Europe isn't actually that difficult. But on the other hand, you have the issue of having to wait for the splits to end to get teams to be done with whatever. So it's not as easy as just saying more international tournaments, because who do you send, what happens? But I think this team management, like the teams, their managements can really benefit from organizing more international inter-country.
You think the teams should organize their own tournaments?
Not tournaments as such. I think that could be okay, but I think the teams should at least make a better effort organizing, I don't want to say scrims, but on the other hand, something that gives them more experience in terms of whatever, so they don't show up at EU Masters and just bomb out again would be sick.
So kind of stronger connections between the countries just generally.
Yeah, sure. Let's go with that.
I don't really know what you're particularly suggesting, but like it's the same in professional leagues as well, right? Like every national tournament, the West shows up and gets smashed by Korea, but like
but then again,
bad for the state of the
this
West.
Is a lot more convenient to organize, though. Like I think that.
I mean, there's still like
national teams are
not just like a bunch of people playing in their rooms. Still, I mean, they're still of that standard where like you can't just. It's not just organizing a tournament for fun type thing.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't really know how it would work in terms of organizations organizing tournaments. Yeah, because I mean, these are, even though you don't know these players, like the average fan doesn't know these players, they're still like proper organizations. You have like Movistar, for example, have a bigger support structure than like most LCS teams. Like there's still a lot of infrastructure and stuff like that. I think 2 tournaments a year is fine. I mean, I think the German teams, they didn't perform well at this tournament, but I don't think it will like massively affect the region. I think there's only a limited number of National League players at the moment still, like less National League standard players. There's not like frequent people being brought out to look you straight into our top level National League. It does happen, but it's not like super frequent. And so I don't think it's going to be like Germany's going to suddenly have all their players leave because they did badly at one of the Masters. Yeah, no, for sure.
But on the other hand, I'd just like to see them. Yeah, okay, sure. You said two times a year is fine, but I think that when you are that closely knit, close together as a region, like I don't think it's difficult to organize more tournaments, and I think that people should organize as many international tournaments or just matches as they can outside of these 2 EU Masters a year, because again it strengthens the players, gives them experience, and that makes EU stronger as a region as a whole. So I think that even LCS teams should be doing their best to really get these national leagues going.
Okay, well let's,
because these are the next tier of players that you're going to be picking up for your team. So I think giving them as much experience as possible is the correct move.
Right. Well, I think we've kind of covered most of the stuff there. So let's.
It's just repeating.
Yes, that's what I was waiting for you to stop. All right. So let's. I don't know. Well, let's move on to talking about MSI. So we don't want to spoil anything. here. But like, were there any particular points about what you've seen in MSI either of you guys would like to bring up?
By not spoiling things, you mean, I mean, like, when we can't talk about today because we stopped during the games, but like, are we not supposed to be talking about the last few days?
I would think at this point it's probably going to be fine for the last few days.
Okay. I mean, the big thing is Fnatic, right? Showing up.
Showing up, finally, yes. After a disastrous day one. I think that the longer you leave it, the more opportunities teams are going to get to start really exposing MLXG. So I think RNG are going to just... I think RNG are actually in danger of losing the playoff spot to Fnatic. But actually, no, I think they're safe. I think Fnatic, RNG competing for the third and fourth, and I think Flash Wolves is secured first, and that Kingzone are going to come in at second.
Do you think? So,
yep. What do you think?
I still think Kingzone are going to come first, personally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I don't know. I think people are going to start
exposing
Mugen. Yeah, well, I guess that'll be the tell-all. But I think that Mugen, as long as he doesn't get exposed too hard, as long as Maple keeps playing the way he does, like Maple and Betty are both having the tournaments of their lives right now. It's a shame that it's not really one that matters too much. But again, just showing that LMS region is better than people give it credit.
So, I mean, LMS is another one, like you're saying, with what happened with ClickTech, right? It's incredibly top-heavy, but they seem to somehow be able to perform as well, which is just super impressive. I think it's so, like, consistently, LMS has been able to do well with their best teams, even though the sort of average LMS team would almost definitely lose to the average even LCS team.
Yeah, I think AHQ are really suffering nowadays, though. So I think it's literally just Flash Wolves that are coming out the gate swinging. Everyone thought Flash Wolves maybe wouldn't do so hot, especially with Karsa being replaced by the unknown quantity that was Mugen. I think Mugen's playing really well right now and supportive kind of style he's providing for Maple and Betty just kind of pop off. But yeah, I think teams might start exposing him once like MLXG stops messing around or whatever. And
do you think then, if you think MLXG is going to be exposed, they're going to be putting in Karsa at some point?
Yeah, I think Karsa starting should happen soon, because during the regular season they were beasting it with Karsa. They also had Z-Type playing top, but then because they can only bring one sub, they only brought Karsa. They actually traded out Karsa for MLXG during playoffs for whatever reason, and then just haven't really found need to use Karsa since, which is a bit unfortunate, because MLXG is like the definition of a coin flip, and I think so far he's been having a suboptimal performance this tournament. But yeah. I think maybe we'll see Karsa play if RNG can continue having such an inconsistent performance, but then again, who knows? Do you have anything in terms of rosters you want to talk about? Perhaps Ole benching himself or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, there's so little to... I can only guess about that sort of thing, especially for just the sort of the one game. I mean... It's hard to say, right? Because it seems from the outside that that's just a terrible decision because it clearly didn't work without him. But I mean, even if he's struggling with like confidence issues and stuff like that, even in a weird way, seeing the fact that actually he is vital to the team because when they don't have him, they look even worse. Maybe that is even a good thing for confidence in a weird way. But I guess like it's so hard to speculate without knowing any of the way the team dynamic is in general and the way the team dynamic is has been during the actual tournament as well.
Yeah, I think he's making a case for Liquid to start investing in the support staff some more, because Liquid, I thought they were spending loads of money on the support staff, because you associate Liquid with the ones to go all out and push the envelope in terms of what they do for their team and what they do to chase success. But
what are you saying
that this was allowed to happen is odd.
What do you mean allowed to happen? Is in like, do you think the coaches should have said no? You can't stop playing.
No. I think that Ole's mental state should have been addressed to the point of this not happening in general. Like, to begin with, he shouldn't be feeling this way. I think that an adequate sports psychologist could have given some sort of mentality check to these players. But then again, I'm not delusional enough to think that everybody is able to be helped. But yeah. Oh man.
I think that's reasonable.
Not to spoil today's games, but MLXG, get it together.
All right, so well, as far as the meta goes in terms of the picks that have been seen during MSI, are there any ones that you guys particularly want to highlight in terms of either now or in the future?
I haven't. I mean, I haven't paid too much attention to the meta change at the moment because our last games were 8.6, so I was up to date on that, and then basically just been watching MSI like as a spectator rather than really delving into it. But it seems like it's like the fairly what you mostly would expect, other than this double tier Ezreal, which is becoming absolutely disgusting at the moment.
All right, well, to move on from MSI talk, if you guys could bring up your patch 8.11 early look patch notes, which I'll do on the stream as well for reference. Hopefully, let's scroll it back up to the top. I want to see what you guys' thoughts on what. Well, I mean, I know it's a little way off, and it's very, very subject to change.
It's probably subject to change, but it's fun speculating.
Yes.
So, I think, I mean, the thing that we were talking about this before we started as well. I think the thing, if you look at the MSI, like the champions that played AD carry, it's Ezreal, Varus. If you look at EU Masters, it was Caitlyn, Varus, same number of picks. And yet in this patch, they seem to be massively nerfing at least the early power of crit AD carries, even though mostly it's not the crit AD carries we've seen doing really, really well. So I don't entirely know if there's going to be other AD carry changes coming in, but like in my mind, this is just going to make Ezreal, Varus, Cogmore, people who build Rageblade first, even stronger than they were, because Infinity Edge is not a good second item, and Zeal's cost more, stuff like that. So it seems a little strange to me. I mean, I like the fact that they're doing some changes, because you do get to this point, especially in like solo queue games where the enemy team has like a Tristana or a Caitlyn, it just feels like you're not organized enough as a team to be able to actually deal with them effectively, and they can just take over a whole game. And they're quite safe in lane as well. So I mean, I understand the point, but it just seems a bit strange that, in my mind at least, still the strongest AD carries are not the people who build Zeal item into Infinity Edge.
Sure, I think they're really going to have to start addressing Varus and Ezreal. I think Caitlyn and Tristana are still doing fine though. Cogmore as well. I think people are sleeping on the Varus, as you mentioned. And again, he's just going to become more powerful with the meta shifting around him. Or I don't think he's going to become more powerful so much as his competition is just getting weaker, so the gap's widening in that regard.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the strength towards the spot lane is the support role, and I think that as long as you have these, like, I'm not sure what these changes are going to do for the Infed JD carries when you have the likes of your Braum, your Morgana, even your Soraka, your Janna. Like, you have so many safe picks to get these AD carries to this 3-item power spike. Yes, you slow down the game a little bit by about 3 minutes or something, but there's no more, like, it's no further innate risk or anything that these teams are taking. It just means that their drafts are just going to become slightly more boring, that their games are going to drag out for longer, I suppose.
I mean, I guess what they're trying to encourage is moving away from that style. And so I think, as far as I'm aware, from what I've seen at the moment, 3-4 items, there's still a lot less damage than they are currently. Just because of the new way the Infinity Edge works, it's not actually that useful when in the mid game. But you're right, it definitely could. It could either be we play even slower because we need to wait even longer before our AD carry gets better, or I guess what they're hoping for is that it allows for these people like, I don't know, like Lucian and AD carries that are not going to be useful later on, but you have a bigger window to hit, because it's all about that basically. You either say like, we're good enough as a team to hit our correct windows and win the game in the times that we need to win the game at, and that's what you see a lot of, like Kingzone and stuff like that doing. Or you go for, we can scale up and just win in the late game by our picks and stuff like that. We can play safe enough, and that's a much easier strategy. And so I think they're just trying to make it more forgiving.
Really binary for pro play, yeah.
Yeah, they're trying to make it more forgiving. So it's like, if we didn't hit our window by 5 minutes, it's okay because they're not as good as they used to be.
Yeah, man. I think, what do you think this means for pro scene though? I think the gap is just going to widen between the West and Korea with this, because all these Korean teams, even Kingzone at this tournament, they pretty much, I don't want to say seed the early game, but they're not known for having these explosive early games, and they play the patient scaling game where they start out playing people in team fights. And I think that this change really will just accentuate that further.
I think it could do. I mean, I don't know how much it's going to affect even just the state of bot lane first, and before I want to speculate of how it could well do. I mean, I think adapting to the new meta has not been a thing that the West is particularly worse at. Like, there are obviously a lot of things that the Western teams are worse at, but I don't think changing to slightly shifting meta styles has traditionally been a problem. It could well do though. I mean, I'm still just looking over these changes and thinking different things each time I read them.
If we move down slightly to the Stormraiser, that's a new crit part of the equation.
So I was thinking, like, what happens if you have Stormraiser and then no crit on Jhin, for example? So you get your first hit as a crit, your fourth hit as a crit. And that means you don't need to wait for any of these modifiers and stuff like that. Like, that could be quite useful. But I don't know. I mean, on the sheet here, it doesn't even say any of the actual stats of this. It just says,
I think very subject to change.
Yeah. So I mean, it completely depends on the actual numbers to it. And then there's also the combo of what is Stormraiser plus Hail of Blades, like on someone like Vayne, for example, where you get your first hit, which is a crit, and then you get 3 other hits that are really fast.
Yes,
straight after that, and you get your proc pretty much. Like, I don't know how fast it is at the moment. I think Hail of Blades is really overtuned, but that's what they do on the PvE. They just try stuff. So it depends when it actually comes to release how much attack speed you get. But that could be something that's quite interesting. And I mean, in general, most of the big changes that Riot make, I think historically have actually been really, really good. So there's lots of backlash to them when they've been talked about. And then when they actually release, they're actually quite good generally. Even though people quite often, me included, quite often forget how good they actually have been. But there's lots of things that at this point I'm willing to sort of trust them that it will be actually useful, and it could let a lot of picks that we haven't seen at the moment come back into the meta.
Well, yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like they're always going to make PvE stuff really overpowered just so people will actually use it at all. And then it's much easier to scale it back to a remotely sensible level than it is to have nobody using it because everyone's like, well, this sucks. Never mind, we won't bother ever using it again. Yeah, Bruce, did you have any thoughts on Hail of Blades and anything which you think might come of it?
No.
That's fair enough.
I have some thoughts on Aurelia. She's
sure,
cool.
Go for it.
I think she's going to flourish more as a mid laner. Because you mentioned earlier, I don't know if we were on stream for that, but how you think that Assassins are going to come back, and I agreed that maybe Assassins will come back with the new armor pen changes. And I think Aurelia really flourishes into those matchups. But again, I think you'd have to draft something like a Vladimir top lane to enable her to do something. She is a split pusher, and she is obviously AD. So, yeah, she does well into Assassins, though. She always really did, because she has this pseudo-tankiness about her. The stun really helps in these 1v1s. Yeah.
The other thing to talk about as well, which I didn't mention this time, I think, as well as all these people building Rage Blades who are still good, there's a lot of AD carries nowadays that are building like AP and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, sure.
Which is still just going to be better and better, right? Because
double tier Ezreal and whatever, yeah.
And also like Nash's Tooth Varus, stuff like that. It's been
Nash's Tooth Varus. Kog'Maw obviously does a ton of magic damage as well.
Well, John, just before we leave the Lord Dominic's regards changes, I mean, yes, there wasn't recorded before on Stream, so just for the benefit of people listening back now, would you mind going over what you said about what you think
Yeah,
the
sure.
changes will do?
So I mean, so the basic thing for people who haven't read the changes is rather than just bonus armor, the percentage from Lord Dominic's or from Executioner Schooling. Actually, it says that's not actually changed, but that's going to be something different. So anyway, the Lord Dominic's changes are back to total armor rather than just bonus armor. And what you did struggle with is a problem if you've got someone like Zed, for example. In solo queue, maybe you can take over the whole game, but in competitive, you're generally going to have a lot less gold. And so you're going to end up with a problem where you can't actually effectively split push against their top laner. And so you're ending up in a situation where their 4 has their mage in it, and your 4 doesn't have your mid laner in it, unless you've got something like a Vlad top or whatever. So it just caps the point where these assassins can become useful, or the certain champions that they can still fight against. Whereas if you've got lethality plus total armor percentage thread like you do now, that you can then get to the point where even if the tank has a couple of items, you can still do some decent damage to it.
Okay, and let's see. So the other changes we've got. Well, I guess we can just kind of jump around patch 8.11. Are there any other things you guys want to kind of cover or point out?
The stats are actually quite a large stat changes. Normally you see very small stat changes, but they're basically just making AD carries worse in lane phase, right?
Yes, so I've got these patch notes up on the screen. So yes, it's
just like 5 less armor and stuff like that, rather than just 1 or 2, which makes quite a big difference. But I don't know what does it actually say which champions? It just says
the
bot lane marksman. That's what it says.
Well, it's going to be, I suspect, a bit like the Doran's ring changes in terms of there'll be some sort of obvious people who aren't like they say here.
Are they changing Doran's blade in response to that?
I haven't heard anything about that, at least.
I think that shouldn't be too like don't sleep on that is what I'm saying. I'm saying that might happen. You know, if they
what's the what, sorry?
If they're nerfing the base ADs of a lot of these AD carries, I think maybe you might see change to Doran's blade.
Well, they put in a little thing, which is that effectively they're giving it a bit of the Doran's ring change, which is that if you miss last hitting by 4 or less, you get it. So it's a sort of, well, they describe it as training wheels because they're taking 4 attack damage off basically everybody.
Oh yeah, that would be why then. But I think it might be decently stackable now as well. Not that anyone ever stacked them in the past 2 years anyway. But I think making Doran's blades worth stacking could be somewhat decent, considering if you die at like level 3 now, you have access to maybe a cull if you're lucky. But yeah, I don't know. I'm rambling.
It says it's not going to affect Quinn, Kindred, and Graves.
Wow, there's insane bot lane AD carries, man.
Well, I think that's the point they're making.
What happens if because you've got your True Grit, how much armor difference Graves is going to be at level 2 compared to someone else?
Yeah, man, new meta incoming.
Quite funny. I don't think it will actually affect that sort of thing, but it could do. You never know. There's also talking about jumping around in the patch notes. One of the comments was saying Halo Blades Mordekaiser for the really quick Q.
That would be interesting.
Actually, quite funny. Wow. I mean, again, I don't think it'll actually be enough to like make him a meta pick, but like that would be quite funny because you just very quickly get to the massive one.
Yeah, man, I like it. All right, is there anything else you guys want to cover in this? I think this will be our last thing for today. So if there's anything you want to get out,
Essence Reaver briefly.
Oh yes, of course. Let's get on to that one.
And at the moment, I don't know if it has an inbuilt cooldown. It definitely will by the time it gets released if it doesn't already.
Yeah, well, we're talking about the Corki and Cogmore being able to
so I mean, it's still going to be really useful on Corki and Cogmore and stuff, right? Because every attack reflects a portion of your missing mana.
Corki, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it must have an inbuilt cooldown, but you'd still think
I think otherwise the Corki build's going to be like Static Shiv into Rapid Fire. Sorry, Trinity Force into Rapid Fire Cannon into Essence Reaver, or even Trinity Force into Essence Reaver straight away.
Yeah, but it doesn't have any crit interaction anymore.
Or even just go for your Sheen and then go for Essence Reaver.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, and it depends as well how much bonus attack speed and uh, how much cooldown you get from your attacks. It might be worth quickly just explaining how it works. So when you normally, so it doesn't have crit anymore, right? And it doesn't give you the cooldown reduction for extra crit. Sorry, it just has base cooldown reduction on still and mana. Your basic attacks refund a portion of your mana. So it used to be crits, or is crits now, right? And now it's just gonna be anything.
Yes.
And then the big one is after casting your ultimate, your next basic attack gives you bonus attack speed and also means your attacks refund like cooldown on your non-ultimate ability. So at the moment, what I've seen is like when you get this item, even if you rush it, you can have Triss Q up permanently. You can have Cogmore W up permanently. You can have like obviously a lot more just of all the other abilities as well. But that's a really cool change. I like that because it sort of can encourage a different style of play where you just focus more on ability-based stuff. Could be quite useful for a lot of people, but I mean, some of the people that you like definitely think it's for, people like Lucian and stuff like that, aren't going to get as much out of the ultimate use generally because I don't know how the numbers work nowadays, but because there's been a lot of changes since Lucian has been in the meta, but it used to be that it wasn't efficient to be ulting when you're in range, and so ulting, you'd ult generally at the end or right at the beginning. Right at the beginning would work obviously with Essence Reaver, but right at the end means you're not getting the passive out of it. So
I'm enjoying this because I'm learning things.
I think it does make me think that possibly this Essence Reaver change is something to do with. I know that Riot wanted to try and bring more variety into the bottom lane, just in terms of how it played out. And John, I think you might be right in terms of saying that they might be trying to encourage a different style of play with this change.
I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I don't know if it's going to be successful. If there's, depending on the inbuilt cooldown, it could just bust people like Corki, as you were mentioning earlier, and Cogmore and stuff like that. If it's like 30 seconds cooldown or whatever it is, then maybe it'll be fine and it'll actually do exactly what they want. But and also the thing I like about it is that it affects the way you play rather than not. So again, if you're talking with Lucian, maybe it is worth opening up with a Lucian ult if you've got when you get this item, especially if you get it first, because then you can dash in and you're going to be getting massive cooldown reductions. You're going to be eating like all the time, which is also really fun to play as and to watch when you get a Lucian who has his E up basically constantly.
Yes.
It's a bit toxic to deal with.
I have a feeling it could be problematic, but yeah, I like the idea at least. All right, guys. Anything else before we tie it up today?
We can talk about players. That's where I excel. We can talk about current patches. That's where I excel. MSI. We already browsed. We already like touched on. LCS next split. Thoughts? I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what. Look, if you choose one of these things, we'll try and tie up the next couple of minutes of just some very, very final thoughts. We don't end up pushing more than 45 minutes on this thing.
Okay.
Your choice, John.
My choice. I've already forgotten the options.
EU LCS next split, NA LCS next split, LPL next split, LCK next split.
I mean,
off-season changes that you'd like to see from any of the teams in those regions?
Oh, there's jungle changes, right? Is that 8.10 or something?
Oh fuck!
What?
Well, now we've got the adult content warning. Thanks, Ibriz.
Well, I mean, I don't know what you want to speculate about.
I stopped myself halfway through. I don't know.
Oh gosh. Well,
Broken Shard said Militia has got some team offers.
What, for LCS?
Apparently so. I think he's either got LCS main team or at least academy team.
Well, yeah, I assume he gets academy team offers.
Well, but what academy team? There's no academy team right now besides like Misfits, as you said.
There's Misfits, there's Vitality, and then people are starting them.
Alternate team, I guess. Yeah.
I think there's going to be more and more academy teams coming up, and they're going to be hopefully really good.
Who was the support I liked watching? Who's the best support that tournament?
I mean, Jesus, probably.
No, besides Jesus. Who's now a sub for Misfits?
I don't know, actually. There's quite a few supports who did quite well.
Who lost to Origin?
who lost
in
Illuminar.
the final. Yeah,
Illuminar.
Illuminar support. He's actually quite good.
Yeah,
I
Illuminar
used
is
to
super interesting
play him a lot.
actually.
I forgot what his name is.
I think it's really cool with teams like Illuminar because they're actually like an all Polish team from the Polish region, and the fact that they did really well is really, really cool. Lord, by the way, is their support.
Yeah, Delaware is a beast, man. Delaware, yes.
Yeah.
He's really good.
Yeah, there was lots of really interesting players to watch from European Masters that are definitely going to be.
He's been around for a while.
Yeah.
I actually slept on him for quite a while. Yeah, he's not bad.
All right, I kind of feel like we've got most of the substantial stuff out.
We were talking about EU Masters, man. We were thinking and thinking. Yeah, we good.
It's. I kind of feel like it's rambling now. It's mildly
back to
rambling.
MSI. We go.
I think.
No.
Well, we could definitely continue this conversation off air. But
yeah,
I think this will probably be enough for this right now. So thank you to John Ellis and Ibris Dyer for coming along today and making this initial pilot podcast be exceptionally more clever and thoughtful than I ever imagined it would be.
Thank you. I really contributed, not quite a lot, but yeah, it was good. I'm entertaining at least. That's always good. My game knowledge is good, but not on hypotheticals, but known quantities, just like MLXG isn't. Okay.
All right. Do you guys have any final thoughts for your thousands of millions of fans on the UK Shoutcasters group?
Goodbye.
Everyone watch the UK scene next split.
Please don't. It's not great. It's really not great.
Everyone watch.
Your time would be better spent watching Turkey play wildcard matches.
No.
All right.
National pride, patriotism. Watch the UK
pride, patriotism. Suddenly I feel Spanish. Okay. Goodbye.
All right, that'll do us for now.
The Spanish people do it now, so
I can't keep these animals under control, so I have to shut this down. But yes, hope you guys enjoy this, and that some of you will come and join us on a future iteration. Hoping to put these out once a week if possible.
Yes, please come along and say hola.
And I need to get people to replace Ibris, so we need some new people in it. So yes, see you guys soon, and thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.